السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا مولانا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Respected friends and elders, Alhamdulillah, we have a very special guest with us today, Alhamdulillah, Dr. Omar Siddique, Alhamdulillah. He recently did a presentation for Javid Bayat, yeah, and their travel agency, mashallah. And I genuinely really enjoyed the presentation done by Dr. Omar, Alhamdulillah. And so therefore, I requested Dr. Omar to um, uh, also to bless us and give us some advices, inshallah, on this journey of Hajj, inshallah. And so, alhamdulillah, Dr. Omar has graciously accepted, and may Allah accept him and bless him tremendously for his efforts, inshallah. If anyone has any questions, inshallah, feel free to put them on the chat, as no one will be allowed to unmute. And so therefore, just you can just put your questions on the chat, inshallah. Dr. Omar at the end, inshallah, will answer your questions, inshallah. Dr. Omar, jazakumullah khair.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just quick confirmation, Mufti Saad, you can hear me okay?
Yes, so we can hear you well.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So just a quick introduction. I've been living in the Maryland area for about 10 years, practice right now as an internal medicine physician. Previously, I have practiced as a family medicine physician and done some urgent care work. I've been for Hajj twice. I went for Hajj in 2008, and I also went in 2018, right before COVID. So, honestly, when Mufti Saad reached out to me and asked me to do this, I felt honored. But one of the reasons why is because, when I went for Hajj, it was easy. Just, oftentimes you hear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to invite you to Hajj. And it's hard to kind of grasp that growing up in America. But you guys are really fully grasping that, because for us, when we used to go, when we went in 2008, you found any group you wanted. It was cheap, and you just went. It was that simple and that easy. And you guys have had to do a lot of man. You've had to register on Nusuk, and then you go into the lottery, and you just hope that inshallah it's accepted. And then after all of that, you have to get a visa, and it's a big process. So, alhamdulillah, I'm honored to be able to speak with you guys, and I hope that, anything that I share can be beneficial for you guys while you're in your journey. Okay. So, now, when I first gave this presentation, it was probably around the time that I should be giving it. Now, you guys are probably leaving quite soon. When are you guys heading out? So anyone can put it in the chat, but I think you guys are all going to be leaving quite soon. So, the outline that I had was really for before traveling, while you're traveling, during Hajj, returning home, and then maximizing your Hajj. But some of this stuff, hopefully, inshallah, you've already taken care of. For instance, your meningitis vaccine. Inshallah, everyone has already taken care of that. Generally speaking, you're supposed to do that at least 10 days before you leave. I'm not sure how strict they are or not, but if you haven't done that yet, then you would go, and the vaccine that you need is the ACWY vaccine. The brand name for it is the Menveo and the Menquad-P. And usually you can get these through your insurance. Most of the people traveling through the United States do not need to worry about anything else. The meningitis is the only vaccine that's mandatory, and then everything else is kind of recommended. They do recommend the Hep A and the Hep B. I'll just mention why. Hepatitis A is something that's spread through water, contaminated water. And so most people that are veteran travelers know not to drink stuff from the local tap water. You always want to get bottled water. The one piece of extra advice I'd give you is that ice can also be contaminated. So you probably want to avoid ice as well, unless you're in a well-established restaurant. One of the other things is you'll see that sometimes they'll have coolers, the Zamzam coolers. They'll have regular room temperature Zamzam water, and then they'll have Zamzam water that they've put ice into it as well. So you may want to avoid that as well. That's up to you. But so hepatitis is transmitted through water. The other vaccine they often tell people to get is hepatitis B, which is spread through blood. Now, this comes into play for you guys after you do your sa'i and you're looking to do your hug, which is shaving your head. You'll see that oftentimes as you exit from Marwa, there'll be barbers that are there just waiting. These are businessmen that are trying to earn an income, but because there's such a huge rush of people that are there, they don't take the best of precautions. And oftentimes they're using the same blade that they use from one person to the next individual. And so that can end up in transmission of hepatitis. So what you want to do is make sure that you go to uh, um, it's best to just go to a barber shop. You can actually find them at the bottom of the clock tower. They'll have barber shops that you go in. You'll see it's a longer line. You will have to wait, but you'll be sure that at least you're getting somebody that is going to take the proper precaution. This is the first year you don't need a COVID vaccine, so you don't need to get that if you don't want to. All right, so now here, like I said, I broke it down to things that you really want to do before you travel. And the first thing is you want to look at your medications. Now, a lot of times people take medications like Tylenol and ibuprofen, and that's fine. But medications kind of break up into two categories. The first category is probably the most important, and that's when you you have prescription medications. So these are medications that you must take for some type of underlying comorbidity like high blood pressure or high cholesterol or diabetes, those types of things. These medications you want to be positive to take onto your carry-on. You don't want to check them in. It'll be very difficult. There are pharmacies, but they do require that you have a prescription with you in order to fill most of these medications. So if you don't have them or they get lost and because you checked it in, your luggage got lost, it'll be very difficult and probably pricey for you to get more of them. So much so that most people that I've heard give these types of talks will often say that if you're going for 2 weeks, take a 4 week supply and have two different bags, just in case one gets misplaced. That's how difficult it is to get some of these medications. The other thing is in the chat, you can probably message me privately if you're going as a caregiver, meaning if you're going and you have your mother or your father or an elder with you that you're going to be taking care of. In these situations, it's really important to kind of be on top of what exactly are their health issues and their limitations so that you can help them, get through Hajj and both of you guys will have an accepted Hajj. And, the effort that you make in helping your mother or your father or your grandfather or your grandmother will also be a means of your Hajj being accepted. So, I'll give you some examples of why it's important to kind of sit down with your primary care doctor. Or if you're, taking care of somebody, it's important for you to go and sit down with your primary care doctor and really understand their medications. So for instance, a lot of people have high blood pressure, and there are many different types of blood pressure medications that people take. So one of them is called hydrochlorothiazide. Another one is called Lasix or furosemide. They have several different names, but the way these blood pressure medications work is that they make people remove fluid from their body by going to the bathroom. Now, if you are going to be walking and exerting yourself in 100-degree temperature, 110-degree temperature, as you guys most likely will be because you're going in the middle of the summer, you're going to be sweating a lot and you're already going to be losing a lot of fluid. So this one particular medication, you probably don't even need to take. or I would be very cautious in taking it. If I had a patient of mine that was going on Hajj and I had them on this particular medication, I would probably change it before they left, unless it was absolutely necessary that they take it. But this is one that could be concerning. Um, I'll give you another one is a lot of our elder community use some type of sleeping medication to help them go to sleep. Now the problem with sleeping medication is that people love it. It's the only way that they can get rest, but it has side effects. And, if you're in very hot temperatures and you're in a confusing surrounding and you're taking medications that are supposed to help you sleep, they can have a side effect of confusion, delirium, um, and so that becomes very challenging to deal with if somebody goes into that state of delirium while they're in Hajj. I've actually seen it in Mina, and it's quite challenging. It's just very difficult. There's not much you can do. You pretty much have to wait until the medication wears out of that individual's system. And even then, it's going to be a long night, and that'll make most of your ibadat very difficult for the next day. Um, so these are just two examples, uh, but you really want to understand what each particular medication is doing and what the side effects are and what to watch out for. So I would recommend that anyone that's traveling that takes several medications, they take the time to talk to their primary care doctor and really understand exactly what are the side effects of this medication. The other thing is that sometimes people are going on Hajj that have terminal conditions, and they have the strength and they have the wherewithal and they have the iman that, they understand that, hey, I have this condition, I might have some type of terminal cancer and I want to go for Hajj. And they're in a lot of pain and they're taking uh, narcotic pain medications. So in those situations, Saudi is quite strict. So if you have any type of morphine or oxycodone or oxycontin, these type of pain medications that you require, you're going to need some type of documentation uh, from your provider to take them with you. Um, it's not, for sure that they're going to take a look at it, but if they do open it up and look at your medications and they see these medications, they'll certainly ask you for documentation. Usually the documentation is in the form of a prescription that carries your diagnosis, your provider's name and number, those types of things. Um, Now, the other type of medications is just supportive care medications. And these are equally as important. Inshallah, everyone here is young and healthy and does not have a lot of prescription medications, but there are a number of things that you can take to actually to make your trip easier. So the first one is I put them in red, but you're going to be walking a lot. You're going to be sitting for long distances, and and so what happens at that point is that your body is going to get sore, your muscles are going to get sore, and and so you need something like ibuprofen. Voltaren gel is something that you can put onto your body as well. You have to ask Mufti Saab about that. The gel, Mufti Saab, it does have it has some smell to it. I'm not sure if that would be problematic when you're in ihram. It's not intended to have a smell, but of course it's a medicine and it does have some form of smell to it. Um, for men in particular, um, when you're walking long distances, you want to avoid some type of chafing that occurs between the thighs. Um, you could use Vaseline. Again, Vaseline is kind of sticky and it's it's not as comfortable. There are other things you can look up like Body Glide. They have non-scented, and this is the type of stuff that marathon runners use. So um, it's meant not to be uncomfortable, and you can again get non-scented versions. Sunblock, you'll be outside quite a bit. Imodium is also an option if you want to take it. There's a lot of people that, when they're in Mina, uh, or Arafah or Muzdalifah those 2 days while they're in Ihram. Um, so uh, those 2 days, sometimes people don't want to use the bathrooms, especially for bowel movements. So they use things like Imodium. The other thing is you can take some eyeglasses, sunglasses. Honestly, I've never worn sunglasses, but when I first went there, because of that white marble floor, I realized that I should have brought some. So even if you're younger and you think that you don't need it, you'll benefit by having some sunglasses. Um, Also, I put here azithromycin. So sometimes people just get diarrhea uh, when they're traveling. As I mentioned, it could come from water, but you want to have, if it's possible, you can take this with you because if your diarrhea lasts a little bit longer, um, or you notice certain things like, hey, I'm having diarrhea and a fever, then you can start taking this medication, and it should treat almost the majority of the things that could be causing it if they're bacterial. Otherwise, it should go away on its own. Um, Additionally, I did mention blood pressure machine. Pulse ox device tells you how well you're oxygenating, and then a thermometer will tell you your temperature. I think every group that goes should probably have this for at least the entire group, in case someone gets quite sick or someone feels quite ill, then at least you can check basic vitals, um, and that would give you some information in terms of how to move forward with somebody that's ill. If their blood pressure is quite low, then you know that, hey, this person might need to go to the hospital. Um, I sent a link out. A lot of times you'll see people traveling with a hand fan or some type of umbrella, but essentially you want something that'll keep you cool and something that can provide shade for you, especially when you're in that particular environment. I think the temperature is actually, I checked, you'll have some days that are well over 100 degrees. I did put see your dentist. I think you guys are kind of cutting it close. Nobody really responded, but Mufti Saab, what is the date that you guys are going? When is everyone flying out?
I think it depends on the person, but I'm flying out Saturday, for example, but different people are flying out different days.
Oh, mashallah. Okay. 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 So this is another thing that I did, is that you guys can actually check this on your phones. If you scroll down on your iPhone, if you just swipe down, you'll get a search bar, and if you type in heart on that search bar, um, you'll have an app that kind of comes up, and it's got a heart on it. And if you click on that, it'll tell you the average amount of steps that you take per day. Now, um, you know, the best thing to do is actually prepare for Hajj, maybe two, 3 months in advance, and try and build up your exercise endurance because you will be walking quite a bit. Um, you don't have the ability to do that at this point if you haven't done it. But at least what you can do is after you have purchased your sandals, you can make sure that they're appropriate by speaking to your scholars. And then you should walk in them. There's a lot of people that buy sandals for Hajj and or Umrah, and they just don't wear them. Their thought process is I'm going to break them in when I go there. And that's the last thing that you want to do. You want to walk in your sandals and you want to make sure that they're comfortable. You still have time if they're not comfortable to get another pair or something else, where you can break them in as well. So I did put some distances here. Generally speaking, if you do tawaf, um, if you do it on the mataf, then the first floor, it's about a mile. Now, as you start going higher and higher up, the distance gets a little bit further. So you're going to be walking potentially up to 2.5, 3 miles to do your tawaf. And then when you do your sa'i again, this is somewhere between 2 and 2.5 miles. So you should be able to expect to walk about 5 miles at one point. That would be the least amount that you would have to walk. That's about 10,000 steps if you actually are checking on your phone. Um, and then I did put some other distances in here. So now, most of the times if you're traveling with a group and this is your first Hajj that you're doing, then it's best to just stay with the group, and not try and walk on your own and go from one place to the other. It's very easy to get lost. Um, if you decide, hey, I'm going to walk from Mina to Arafat, when you get to Arafat, it's going to be hard to find your group. Every tent pretty much looks the same. It'll be very difficult to find your group. And even if you were to walk from Arafat to Musdalifah, the same thing would happen. It's so hard to find the group that you travel with if you leave them in those particular places. So the best thing to do is, if this is your first Hajj, or you're traveling with family, is just to stay with the group and take the buses. But these are distances, and the ones that are probably the most relevant for you guys is when you start getting to the 10th of Dhul Hijjah and the 11th of Dhul Hijjah and the 12th. When you have some flexibility, a lot of times people will choose that, hey, I'm starting to feel like a veteran. I can go to Jamarat when I want to go. Or sometimes people just want to go alone to Jamarat because they've now figured out the route. They've done it a few times. And it's not as far of a walk. You can see it's about 2 miles, so it won't take you that long to get to Jamarat and then another 2 miles to get back. So, if you're inclined to do so, then these are about the distances, and that's probably the only place that I would advise that you do walking on your own if it's your first time going. Okay, so that was all before traveling. This is while you travel. Now, the flight is quite long. Um, and one of the things you want to avoid is that when we travel, a lot of times if people are just sitting the entire time, gravity is kind of pulling your blood down your body and it pools at the bottom of your legs. And so when it stays stagnant and it doesn't move, unfortunately, you can develop something like a blood clot. So to avoid this, the best thing to do is while you're sitting, every hour, maybe you can do uh, they're called calf pumps, but you just bring your toes forward to your shin and back down to the ground, pointing to the ground with your toes. And you do this about 10 times every hour. In addition to that, I would recommend you just get up and walk in the plane, every maybe 1 or 2 hours, that you can just take a lap around the plane. By doing that, you're actually promoting blood movement and it prevents any chances of developing blood clots. That is something that would be considered, um, it's something that would be considered an emergency, unfortunately, and it could cause uh, quite a bit of problems during your trip. And it's easy to avoid. The most common thing that you really get is most people when they fly, they do get a little bit of swelling. They'll get some swelling in their ankles and their feet and their hands. There's not much that you can do to avoid that, but that will go away on its own. You could maybe prepare for your trip by making sure that you have a low salt diet before you fly out. That would help in avoiding that type of swelling as well. So now this is a bigger thing, and I think this is, very common um, during Hajj. And you want to do this because you want to avoid dehydration. There are many illnesses that people get on Hajj, but probably the one most avoidable one is dehydration. It's also the most common one. And the reason why is because you're in Mina, you're in Arafah, you're in Musdalifah, and the bathrooms are not very clean. So people make a conscious decision that, hey, I'm not going to drink water and I'm not going to eat much. And sometimes people on top of that are just taking medications that can make it worse as well. The average male needs about 3 liters of fluid a day. Now, you have to remember that sometimes we get fluid from food as well. So, you don't have to actually drink 3 liters of water a day because you're getting it from the food that you eat. And for women, it's about 2 liters. So you want to keep that in mind. You probably want to set a target goal of how much you're going to take in. And then if you notice that, hey, I'm sweating quite a bit, then you want to increase that. Um, Again, it's just not worth worrying about. And if you're traveling with an older person, for them, they have even more reason to avoid drinking. For them, making wudu is a challenge. If somebody has arthritis in their knees, it's hard for them to sit down, it's hard for them to clean their feet, then they're even more inclined, to drink less. And they're purposely going to try and avoid drinking. And that could take them towards dehydration even quicker. So I would, strongly recommend that if you're traveling with one of your parents, you're checking in on how much they drink and those types of things. Um, Now, this is one of those things that uh, I think everyone can kind of keep an eye on um, because this does happen. Again, this is a very common occurrence at Hajj. So sometimes people just get heat exhaustion. It's very common. You're walking outside for a mile, it's 115 degrees, and you just get heat exhaustion. Now, it kind of makes sense. When you look at a person that has heat exhaustion, they're just sweating a lot, right? You see this person is sweating a lot. They look kind of weak. They might tell you, "Hey, I've got a lot of cramping." They've lost a lot of salts, potassium in their sweating, sodium in their sweating, and that's leading to cramping as well. Treating that is quite easy, and that's not really a medical emergency if you recognize it. You just get that particular individual to a cooler area, you have them sit down, you have them rest, you have them drink. Um, and you can kind of avoid any type of problems. Now, if you don't recognize this, then it kind of turns into this heat stroke, which would be considered an emergency. And I've seen this happen several times, and it's very frustrating. It's very unfortunate, and it would be considered an emergency because when you enter into heat stroke, that's when you have organs in your body that start to shut down, like your kidneys and your liver, and it can impact your heart and your brain. And so here, when you see somebody due to heat, you want to be able to recognize these symptoms. Now, if a person is confused, that should be like a very quick giveaway that, okay, look, this person might be entering into a stage of emergency. Confusion is a very good barometer to use to differentiate between heat stroke and heat exhaustion. The other thing is it's kind of common sense. If somebody has heat exhaustion, you'd expect them to be sweating. But if they're no longer sweating, then their skin is dry, it's red, but they're not sweating. And this is a sign that, hey, we really need to get this guy to the hospital. Um, and you should be able to find when you're there, you'll see people that actually have vests that'll have the Red Cross on it. So those vests, if you go to them, they purposely get people that can speak different languages as well to wear those vests. So you should be able to get medical help pretty quickly. I would also advise that if you're concerned about somebody like this, it's better to just have one of the medical techs or the people that are there to help with these particular things take a look at the person that's uh, in difficulty because it's very easy to treat. If you give somebody an IV and you just take them out of the heat for a period of time, they'll get better. And it'll save their Hajj. It'll make everything better for the group as well. Um, okay, so this is returning home. This is kind of I put this in here because I didn't do this. Um, I was a lot younger when I went, and I basically landed maybe around 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was set to work the next day, but I was sick. I was coughing up like green mucus, and I had a fever. You have to understand that everyone is going on this trip, and then when you come back, you're on a plane, and there's so many people that are sick on the plane, and they're coughing and they're sneezing. Um, it is a place where you could very easily get sick, and if you're somebody that wants to wear a mask during your trip, this is probably the best place to do it is on your flight back. Um, so I would give yourself a day or two before you have to go back to work, just to make sure you're well rested. Um, all right, so this is the last part. Now, these are all physical things that we've kind of talked about. I think mentally just getting the most out of your Hajj, um, and having no regrets when you come back for Hajj is very important. The first thing I would say is that sometimes people go on this trip with an idea that I'm going to have fun, that I'm going as a vacation, and they create all these different expectations for themselves. And then they get angry or they get frustrated um, when these expectations are not met. You have to understand that the guides that you're going with, they don't control any of this stuff. Before people were going with groups like Dar es Salaam and these other groups, and they would promise that, hey, you're going to have this fruit and you're going to have this chai and you're going to have this here and you're going to have that there. The guides you're going with, they don't control any of that anymore. Um, it's all controlled by the local Saudi group. And so what you get is what you get. And if you complain to them, they probably won't care. So the best thing to do is to really just remove expectations from your mind. Um, expect the food not to be great. If it turns out to be great, you'll be surprised. You'll be happy. Alhamdulillah. Um, a lot of times people go with the idea that I need to get this gift for that person. I need to get this gift for that person. Again, I'll tell you, having been there several times, the products are quite poor. It's not even worth going shopping there. There's not much that you can get, and the quality of the things that you get uh, is not the greatest. So I wouldn't go with that expectation either. Um, honestly, the first time I gave this, I gave the advice of, really creating a game plan for while you're there. In particular, you should have a dua that's prepared for the first time that you see the Kaaba. It's well noted um, that the dua of an individual that looks at the Kaaba for the first time is largely accepted. So that's something you should sit down and actually have a game plan for. You don't want to come back and just think, man, I wasted that opportunity. The very first time that I saw the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Ibrahim alayhi salam built, I wasted that opportunity. That's not something that you don't want to carry that with you, especially since you're paying so much to go. You're paying $15,000, $20,000 to go. So you want to maximize it and you want to accomplish the things that you set out to do. Um, the other thing is when you're doing your tawaf, um, you want to know what kind of du'as am I going to make? At this point of your trip, you don't have a lot of time to memorize different du'as. Um, so hopefully, inshallah, you've been doing it beforehand. But if you haven't, then you should sit down and give it some thought. I have 7 circuits that I need to do. These are the du'as that I'm going to do for the first circuit, the second circuit, the third circuit. You write down the things that are important to you and what comes from your heart is the best thing to make du'a. Um, but, and also, you guys are blessed to be able to go with a mufti that can kind of answer all of these questions for you and give you advice on the type of du'as to make as well. One of my teachers would actually say that, you know what, in order to remember even which circuit they were on, they would start with the dua of the prophets, Adam alayhi salam. Uh, sorry, my kids are coming in, but yeah, so they would go through with all of the different prophets, particular du'as, and they would use those to remember each individual circuit that they were on. But you should create some type of game plan for that, as well as the time where you get to sit in the roda. These are the things that are important. The last thing I'll tell you is that we come from a tradition where we put purification into our time, we put purification into our travel. So a lot of times people get worried about, did I make this mistake and how much do I have to pay for this dumb? You really should just go with the mindset that, you know what, I'm going to give this much in sadaqah just to put barakah into my travel. And that way you already have that amount set aside. If you make a mistake here, you make a mistake there, you pay your dumb, but you don't worry about it and you don't allow it to kind of fester in your heart. Um, so, you know, I I hope inshallah that there was some benefit in the presentation. I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make your trip easy. You guys are you're intending for Umrah, you're intending for Hajj. May Allah make it easy for you. May Allah accept it for you. May Allah allow you to go safely and return safely. Um, Again, truly, it was, an honor to have this time of yours to just give you some tips. And I genuinely wish the best for you guys. It makes me very happy to be able to speak to you guys. Assalamu
Jazakallah khair,
alaikum.
Dr. Omar. Thank you so much for your time. May Allah Ta'ala accept it. May Allah Ta'ala bless you tremendously as well. Inshallah, all those who are going, inshallah, you can definitely pray for him, of course, inshallah, during the journey as he has requested. But inshallah, don't forget us as well, inshallah, and hopefully we'll meet there, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.